Now we start this hour with in Davos. The US-EU trade deal is now on hold until further notice. European Parliament Chair Bernd Lange has announced that negotiations will suspend over concerns regarding sovereignty and the ongoing Greenland dispute. The deal, which was initially struck in July of 2025, had lowered US tariffs on European goods. However, senior European lawmakers have said that the deal is now unapprovable after President Trump threatened new tariffs over the Greenland issue. Trump has warned that if the US does not gain control of Greenland, countries including Denmark, Sweden, and Germany will face 10% tariffs starting on February 1st. Though after Trump's meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has announced on his Truth Social platform that he will no longer be moving forward with tariffs on European countries. However, it was not clear whether the US-EU trade is back in place or not. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Jayjit Bhattacharya. He's an economist and finance expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Mr. Bhattacharya, for joining us again. Good to see you.
Same.
Thank you. Now looking at this, what do you think, what political factors led the European Parliament to suspend US-EU trade deal despite this apparent rollback? Or not very apparent, but do you think that they had to do something about the US tariff threats? That's why they did it.
Here's the bottom line, that trade leverage works only until it collides with sovereignty, and then it starts backfiring. So the trade agreement has been used as a leverage by the United States till they started impinging on European sovereignty by laying a claim on Greenland. And that really is a red line. So this is not just a trade pause, it's a trust rupture. And going back on it, it will not be very easy, because then the European Union would need a whole bunch of non-coercion safeguards, written assurances, and a clearer dispute resolution limits. So the deal is not going to be automatically back on track just because the United States has backtracked on its tariff threats, because also what is being seen in the last 1 year is that what the US says is not dependable. And we have seen that happening in its bombing of Iran, where it said that it's not going to bomb Iran, and then a week later it went and promptly bombed Iran. So there is very little now trust in what the US is saying. And therefore, for the deal to come back from the European side, that there would be a need for written assurances, non-coercion safeguards, and also keep in mind that the deal has been now referred to the Supreme Court, which is almost like a bureaucratic sledgehammer, because then it will weave through the European Supreme Court and will take its own sweet time to come out. So these are some of the challenges that we see coming out, and it's almost reflective of what happened between Europe and the US in the early 1800s, before the 1812 war, where the United States cut off trade relationships more or less with continental Europe, especially France and Britain, and it immediately actually hit back the American economy, and subsequently it also hit the British and the French economy. So it's a repeat of that is what we are seeing, and I guess we're not learning much from what has happened in the past. Also, let's keep in mind that Greenland is not a bargaining chip for market access. So for Europe, this really crosses from trade policy into security and constitutional territory, and which is why the US response is much sharper than a regular normal tariff dispute. So till now, when it was seen as a normal tariff dispute, we had seen the heads of the European nations come down to the White House, have a conversation, have a discussion, but we are not seeing any more of that, and we are seeing very sharp rebukes at the Davos from the European leaders. So the red line has really shifted, and the tone of the conversation has really shifted. So the backtracking that was announced by the US administration is just a small step. I think much more needs to be done to repair the trust, the trust threat that has happened, or the lack of trust that has happened between Europe and the US. Much more needs to be done to fix that.
Right. So, what are the immediate economic implications for if, in case U.S.-EU trade flows are suspended, and what if this goes on?
So it's going to be detrimental for the global economy for sure, because between the Europe and US, it's almost 10% of the global population, if not more, and it's about roughly 40% of the global economy that we're talking about. So any freezing of trade flows between these two economies is going to have an impact on the rest of the global economy. In the short term, we see both the US and Europe getting hit, because the first thing that the Europe will do is hit at the US farm exports, and that's a very sensitive part of the Europe of the American economy. We've already seen that all major economies have been actually hitting the US agriculture, be it the Chinese who stopped buying American soya, to even India, and now we see Europe threatening to do exactly the same. So the US farm sector will take a massive hit in this particular case. And also, we see that the tech sector in Europe will take a significant beating. What we also see is a reshuffle happening, because wherever the US steps out, or US imports are stopped, the Chinese imports will start flowing in. So we see China being a great winner in the trade dispute between US and Europe, and which is why you will also see that the Chinese stocks are actually going up, while rest of the global stocks have been going down because of the new friction that has come up over Greenland. So it's going to be quite challenging, and there will be a reshuffling of global economic powers because of this particular rift that has happened. We're also slowly seeing a US versus a non-US economic shift globally. So earlier during the Cold War days, there was the Western powers and the communist economies. Now we are seeing a restructuring towards American economy and the rest of the world economy. So we are seeing a sharpening of that, and the rest of the world economy seems to be kind of revolving around Europe, the China and India. So that's becomes the pillars of the non-American global economy that we are seeing is shaping up.
With that, I would like to thank Mr. Jayjit Bhattacharya for joining us and sharing